Despite never voting for him and really loathing his party more than I ever have in my lifetime, there was a time in the recent past where I kind of felt bad for Joe Biden. Here was this guy who obviously cognitively was not all there, and he was having problems, and kind of felt sorry for him like I would any other older person who is dealing with those issues. But no, not anymore. I don't feel sorry for this guy at all. In the past week, we learned that any American president could have put just the slightest amount of pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu and ended all the killing that's been happening in Gaza and in Israel, but just all this killing and getting to a ceasefire. We're not quite there yet, but that's all it took. Donald Trump did that. He made Benjamin Netanyahu agree to a ceasefire deal. We're not quite there yet, but you know what I'm saying. Biden could have done that, as he and Kamala Harris said they were working tirelessly to get to a ceasefire. Bullshit. That's not what they were doing. They weren't remotely doing that. We now know, and he's taking credit for it. He's saying, you didn't do that. Donald Trump did that, and he's not even president yet. So that pissed me off. Number one, the hell with this guy. Number two, what we're going to talk about today, in his farewell address, the balls on this guy. One of the most famous farewell addresses of the 20th century was President Dwight Eisenhower, who warned of the military-industrial complex on his way out the door. What was he talking about?
By the military-industrial complex.
He was talking about the defense contractors, the Pentagon, and all these people working in tandem to create an industry that would seek out war, that the U.S. would be in a permanent war footing. And that's pretty much what's happened since Dwight Eisenhower gave that speech well over, I guess it's been 3/4 of a century ago now. Joe Biden has sort of mimicked what Dwight Eisenhower did. He's going to warn us here. This was his farewell address the other night. I didn't even know what was going on, but here we are. But this stuck out to me as so pompous and so arrogant and so stupid and so wrong and so illiberal. We'll get to that in a second. But this is Joe Biden warning in his farewell address of the tech industrial complex. Listen to this idiot.
I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech industrial complex.
Good God. I mean, all right.
It could pose real dangers for our country as well.
What is this tech industrial complex that could pose real dangers? Please tell us, Joe.
Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation.
Oh, you mean misinformation and disinformation like being the President of the United States and your name's Joe Biden and you said that you were responsible for a ceasefire that just happened? Or misinformation and disinformation like intelligence officials saying that Hunter Biden's laptop was not legitimate before the 2020 election and the entire media running with that, including the White House? Or misinformation and disinformation like there's no way that COVID-19 could have came from a Wuhan Chinese lab, and then we find out that that's the likeliest origin, as even recognized by the FBI at this point. And how dare independent media voices question these establishment narratives and this misinformation? He's so full of it. Let's continue.
Enabling the abuse of power.
The abuse of power.
The free press is crumbling.
The free press is, the establishment press is crumbling. The legacy media, Washington Post, the New York Times, CBS News, MSNBC, they're crumbling because they don't have any integrity. They lie to us on a regular basis. The job of a modern journalist, in their eyes, they never would say it this way, but this is where we're at, is not to challenge power, not to challenge government. It's to adopt and promote and protect government narratives. That's what they did during COVID. That's what they've done with Biden's presidency. Oh, he's sharp as a tack, they told us, until we figured out he wasn't. Oh, Kamala Harris is this great leader with all the skills, until Americans decided she wasn't and voted otherwise. But let's continue.
Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking.
Fact-checking. Oh, yeah, those guys are always right. Yeah, no bias there whatsoever, and that's a problem. Hey, if you're Joe Biden and your main thing is to protect and promote government narratives, you want fact-checkers to do that and to censor.
The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable.
We must hold the social platforms accountable. Who is we? Because we've already seen this in the Biden administration. They wanted to establish an actual federal agency called the Disinformation Governance Board that would regulate our speech, a direct violation of the First Amendment. When he said we must hold these social media platforms accountable, or whatever he said, he's talking about censorship. And before anybody gets crazy, I'm not just talking about private platforms having content moderation. which any private platform is going to do, though some might be more biased than others, and Elon Musk and now Mark Zuckerberg have addressed that on their own platforms. I'm talking about the federal government of the United States applying pressure on private actors and private social media platforms to censor. That's what the Biden administration has done. We know it. Zuckerberg has admitted it. We saw it in the Twitter files. This is scary stuff. Let's see what he has to say in this last little bit left.
To protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power.
Okay, so what this tells me, look, everybody across the ideological spectrum is hypocritical when it comes to free speech. You have people who are Republicans or right-leaning right now who want to ban the speech of those who are pro-Palestinian protesters or deport them. That's not First Amendment, and any Republican who talks like that or says things like that is a complete hypocrite if they say they're for free speech. But that is not an institutional thing within the right or the Republican Party. That's an opinion that some have. An institutional aspect within the Democratic Party now, as espoused by the Democratic Party's still current president in his farewell address, is that censorship is good, that the First Amendment is a problem, that free speech is a problem. This little snippet of his farewell address is reminding everybody that the Democratic Party, including everybody at the top with the president, believes in censoring free speech. They think it's bad. They think it's dangerous. That's scary. So between what we now know about what Joe Biden could have stopped in Gaza with all those killings, and this failure of a president telling everybody, I am the President of the United States, I'm a Democrat, free speech is dangerous, it's bad, we need to regulate it. That's essentially what he's saying, and trying to copy Dwight Eisenhower's military-industrial complex by talking about the big tech complex, whatever the hell he called it.
By the military-industrial complex.
Of a tech-industrial complex.
This is such a shameful president on many levels. I can't wait for him not to be in office anymore. And this thing within the Democratic Party, his party, where they think free speech is a danger and censorship is good, is something I don't want to see implemented anytime soon.